Welcome. Hi, I'm Lance Hart, producer of today's LinkedIn Live event, where we will discuss how to drive business outcomes and embrace digital transformation with VMware. Today, I am joined by Michael Leonard, VMware Senior Product Marketing Manager. Hi, Michael.
Hello, good to be here.
Also joining us today, I have John Lloyd. He is practice principal at Onyx of our strategic accounts. Hello, John.
Good afternoon.
And finally, we have Steve Harris of Onyx, Senior Director of Service Delivery. Hello, Steve, and thanks, guys, for joining us today.
Hey there.
So I'd like to kick things off to Michael, and I know we're going to talk about a lot of things today, VMware related. Michael, could you just kind of give us the basic overview of what is SASE?
Yeah, that's a good thing to start out with. SASE is a platform, and it's an extensible platform, meaning that you can add services to it. And the idea behind it is that you can bring together cloud networking and cloud security in one platform with a single pass architecture, and it's delivered from points of presence in the cloud. The important thing about SASE is that it gives organizations access with reliable high-performance service to applications that are anywhere, whether they're in the data center or in the cloud, or if they're software as a service. And it's really designed for the distributed workforce, where you have users who may be in the main office, in the branch office. These days, a lot are in the home office, or they're on the go with their laptops, hanging out at coffee shops. Wherever they are, they need reliable and high-performance access to the applications, and they need it from a lot of different device types, whether it's a laptop or a mobile phone, whatever else they may be using. And the SASE platform sits between the users and the applications, and it provides networking and security on demand, and it provides it at scale. So I think that's the basics for us to get started with.
Gotcha. Okay. Anybody else have anything to add there?
So Lance, I think one of the things when we start talking about SASE, VMware SASE, in our opinion, brings a lot of value to the table beyond what maybe the initial phase one of SASE was, right? Along the way, somehow big security vendors got a hold of SASE and tried to make it a firewall in the cloud. Security is a aspect, right? It's the secure part of a secure access service edge. But I think to Michael's point, it's really about the applications, and it's about connecting users to those applications and moving the access edge out of my data center and out of my branches. And so I think that's a key point we're going to talk through today. And as you kind of have here on the slide, is the idea of edge services. And VMware is uniquely suited to kind of take this mobility of applications and connect them anywhere. I think that's one of the big fallacies or misses in what I would call SASE 1.0, and really seeing VMware lead that charge of SASE 2.0, which is it's not just a proxy, it's not just a firewall in the cloud. Security is a component of it, and I think VMware is really redefining that.
I think it's great that you bring that up because, one of the questions I thought of was, from one of the differentiators from VMware SASE is the ability for a customer to utilize VMware SD-WAN and integrate with third-party security solutions. Is that something that somebody can elaborate on a little bit? Maybe Michael? You wanted to start us off?
Certainly. There we go with the slide. So what's important to understand about the VMware SASE platform is it is extensible. We have our own security services, our own networking services, but a lot of organizations may have one of these other vendors deployed, and they may choose to stay with them for a while. So with VMware SASE, we can do what we call service chaining from one service to another, but all managed from the same platform. So we give customers the choice, use our services or use their own, and they can migrate and change as they need to.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, we've talked a little bit about the benefits. What are some of the benefits that the customer will see with implementing SASE?
So I'll kind of kick off. So one, to highlight on Michael's point of this ability to be a one-stop shop a single pane of glass with VMware SASE and the security that's inherent to it. What is another unique piece is, again, security is a part of it, and that part doesn't necessarily need to be VMware. So maybe you have existing agreements in place, licenses aren't expired. Maybe you've got a distributed sort of security architecture where you've got some physical head-end firewalls. Maybe you keep some branch firewalls. Maybe SASE and the cloud security component is an add-on to that existing architecture or infrastructure, especially for a nomadic or work from home sort of employee. So first is that ability. What do I get is ease of deployment and flexibility. The second benefit that I look at for customers is, in the past, networking and security had to work together, but they sometimes would trample each other. A great security posture could affect the performance of the network. And when network wanted to solve network challenges, sometimes that could be at the risk of removing security layers, removing inspection layers. And I think bringing the points of presence that VMware has distributed globally, we'll talk more about that ability for a single pass architecture that Michael mentioned, the ability, I'm not going to sacrifice my network performance by bringing in security. I have the ability to bring my enforcement points already distributed. So when you look at total cost of ownership, if I'm a globally distributed or even a nationwide distributed network, I don't have to go and build out a security posture. It's already there. So I think one is I get better network performance without sacrificing security. And the second is I kind of have this always on, easily horizontally scalable global security architecture out of the gate.
Yeah.
I also think that, a big part of the value here is the ability to extend it and grow it as you require. This isn't something you have to start out and do everything all at once as a big bang. You can really work your way through this because it does scale so well, and you can put the building blocks together to make a complete solution over time as your security posture changes, as your licensing expires from previous or other vendors, and you can incorporate it all.
Okay, so how does this stack up? With SD-WAN being key part of SASE, how does VMware SD-WAN solution stack up against other SD-WAN solutions?
Well,
Michael, you want to lead off?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is something, of course, that we're proud of at VMware. Gartner talks to a lot of customers and gets their feedback, and they talk to customers for all the different vendors out there. And so, 5 years in a row, we've been right up in the leaders quadrant. And what Gartner called out is that we have a solid product. We score very high as far as having features, having deployments, having scalability, and the kind of capabilities that you need. But they also call us out for innovation, that we have a strong roadmap and that we've continued to innovate. When we won the first year, we were happy, but we realized, well, you have to keep at it. It's always a changing market. And the last thing that they called us out for was a strong understanding of that market and being able to listen to customers and deliver on capabilities that they need.
And from the Onyx standpoint, Lance, when we went to market, late 2015, right, an early adopter of SD-WAN, it was a crowded marketplace and there was no Gartner report yet, right? That idea of a software-defined edge and that this report didn't exist. And so from our side, there were 62 different SD-WAN vendors in play.
Yeah.
Now that's consolidated quite a bit, some organically, some inorganically, but we wanted to make sure that we were choosing, the right partner from the beginning to help our customers. And we did a live bake-off, and we brought in 10 different, at the time, were kind of the top market share, 10 different SD-WAN providers, ran them through a series of 10 different tests. And really, it was a 1 week bake-off through these different scenarios. And there was only one vendor, and that's the VMware SD-WAN platform, that was able to pass all 10 tests. And then in the tests where multiple vendors passed, we ranked them in order of their performance. And we'll talk through some of those reasons why and some of those tests here in the coming minutes. But from our side, we didn't have Gartner when we had to make a selection. And so we did it as a live bake-off. And so it was really a vindication for us when Gartner did come out with their first report that they had the same findings we did. And here we are 5 years later, haven't looked back.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. We talked about, you both talked about a lot of different things that make VMware solution unique. Can we talk a little bit about the VMware's global network and their POPs? Is that something you can explain to the audience?
You want to kick off, Michael?
Yeah, somebody want to jump in on this one?
Sure.
What makes this so unique? What's special about this?
Well, we're there where the applications are and where the users are. So traffic doesn't have to go back to some central location that might be far away and introduce hops in the network and latency. So the entire SASE platform sits in these 150 different locations. So users connect to the closest POP to get the best service, but also for data integrity. So their data doesn't leave their POP, which is in their geographic region, which is quite important for countries that have laws around, integrity of your data and the location of the data.
And I think, from if I'm a network engineer, network admin, again, I talked about how VMware is kind of redefining what SASE is. The same was true when it came to SD-WAN, which is this fallacy of it's an MPLS replacement. It can, and certainly we see organizations moving away from legacy private networking and using internet as transport or LTE or 5G as transport. However, most SD-WAN vendors are really designed to connect your branches back to your data centers. We're just doing it over a different transport. We're going to create an overlay, and maybe we'll steer an application over path A or path B. But what happens when those applications leave the data center? And so when you start looking at what is my business outcome? I'm migrating to SaaS applications. I'm migrating to the cloud. All of a sudden, the idea of connecting my user to my data center or my building to my data center, that's not going to help. It's about that application experience. And so having this distributed global architecture that sits in the cloud network exchange, right, sits in the CDNs, sits in the internet exchange points across the globe, I now have the fastest path. And so if you think of SD-WAN, is really about a bookend between site A and site B and choosing the best path to get there. Most SD-WAN is A and B of your network. And what VMware is doing is extending your network securely and flexibly and at scale to those global distributed applications, whether it be SaaS or public cloud.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. So we support any transport type, multiple links, but direct access from the user's location to the cloud with no backhaul through the data center.
Yeah, and you guys bring up some good points there. Maybe Steve, applications may reside in many different locations for customers. How does SASE help companies access all of their necessary applications?
Well, yeah, as we've been talking about, we have more and more applications that are being delivered by SaaS. So you got software as a service-based delivery. You have corporations whose secure edge is no longer in their data center, and so when you think about it, you have to now, instead of using the traditional model of bringing your traffic to your security, you have to bring your security to your traffic, and that's what SASE allows you to do. It allows you to securely connect directly to where these applications reside, which is why all those POPs are so important. It means you have a direct, secure connection. That's probably one of the biggest components. The other component that really makes it, help for being able to, get to the applications is something we talked about a little bit earlier, and that is that, while you do have a whole security and networking solution with the VMware SASE model, it's also being able to be rolled out in a building block nature. So you can start with secure components of it and then roll it out over time. And we find that, as organizations are trying to implement SASE, that this ability to roll it out and build on it and to extend it over time means that they don't have to go through a one large big bang approach to get this rolled out. And it's an incremental security model that allows you to ensure that you've got that secure access no matter where your applications reside, globally.
Gotcha. Okay. Now that we kind of we understand how applications can be accessed via SASE, but does SASE help with application performance at all?
So I think there's a couple of phases to this, right? So one is the SD-WAN, right, which is your traditional edge layer 3 routing, and then the second is the POPs that SASE. So we'll start with from the standpoint of how do we help application. I talked about how one of the big shifts of VMware in the SD-WAN space was the idea that we're going to take that SD-WAN network to the application rather than just back to the data center. We can still do the data center because you may still have applications there, but we want to connect you to the application wherever it lives. The second is most SD-WAN providers out there are going to do something called an application SLA, where we're going to steer traffic over the best performing link in real time, and we're measuring that. Well, again, if we're only measuring back to the data center, that doesn't really help me with the wild west of the cloud CDNs or the public internet exchanges. The second piece is maybe my business doesn't have a benefit of 2 always-on connections. We think about this in retail a lot, right? The idea of paying for a link to sit there in a backup state. Or maybe you take an approach of, I want one dedicated link with an SLA and I want one best effort link. That all of it is supported. However, what about when we have upstream DNS issues? Or what if we only have one internet connection and maybe LTE sitting in standby? And so there's an inherent value that VMware SD-WAN brings, which is packet-based routing even over a single link. So in the image you were showing, we actually had 2 links, but one went completely down and the second was performing poorly. We're able to protect that traffic. We're able to packet-based route it. We can duplicate it. So we're not only steering it to the best link, we're choosing the best link. And so I always talk about, a simple analogy is when you use Waze, right, on your car GPS, and you say, hey, which path is better, A or B? And that is the normal sort of SD-WAN. What VMware is doing is basically allowing you to drive on the shoulder. So even when all routes available, even if that's only one route, has a traffic jam, we're going to create kind of a free pass for you. The second piece is those POPs and the SASE POPs. We have more and more of our customers coming to us on the Onyx side and saying, we want a multi-cloud strategy. We want a flexible architecture. Maybe we're looking at containerization. We're using Avi networks for load balancing from VMware, right? Software-defined load balancing. And so all of a sudden, my application may not always reside in the same place. Maybe I'm doing GeoIP lookup, right? We think about applications in the SaaS world like Microsoft, where we're going to look at where's my IP sourcing from and how do I get it onto my platform as quick as possible. And so that's the second piece. Not only are we helping an application perform reliably in an unreliable world of, say, a best effort broadband connection, we're also helping get it closest to the distributed architecture, whether that's a multi-cloud IaaS for the customer or it's a geo-distributed GeoIP lookup of a Microsoft 365 using those POPs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, let's see what else do we have here. So speaking of, obviously Onyx is a managed service provider. Steve, why should people choose Onyx as their managed service provider?
Yeah, choosing Onyx, I think it really comes down to 3 key things. First of all is expertise. We've been doing this for quite some time. We have a lot of deep experience across not just the SD-WAN component, but all the way up through to the security side of how SASE works. And so that expertise and our level of certification and the experts that we have in region to be able to do this work is really, really second to none. But the second piece would be experience. We've been doing this for quite some time. We've been doing it for a long time. So we've not only seen how to theoretically do things correctly, like to follow the recipe, if you will, but we've also seen where things can go wrong, how to fix them, how to make it real and work in the real world. We own and operate our own data centers, and we manage services for and provide managed services for customers across the country, and that means it's not only something that will, like I say, theoretically work well, but we have the operational experience and background that grounds it in the reality of what does this look like when you roll it out in a large scale, because we have to do that for ourselves and our customers all the time. And the third real, I guess, partner with Onyx differentiator would be around our approach. We have a very high touch, interactive approach. I often say to customers, listen, we want to do this with you, not to you. We want to make sure that we are working with you to make sure that your business outcomes are being achieved, that it's not just the for selling technology or putting in technology, because technology, it's a great way to spend money, but it's often not a great way to solve a problem. We want this to solve the problem. So we focus very much on a deployment methodology that's zeroed in on solving business issues and addressing critical business requirements. And that really allows us to take that expertise, the experience, and the approach gives us an exceptional customer experience when we go and partner with them to put in a VMware SASE solution.
I would add to Lance, when you look at, aside from our tight everything Steve mentioned, right? Our tight integrations with VMware, our years and years of experience, learning through skin knees. I think also we don't have what I would consider a vested interest or a dog in the fight, right? We aren't trying to protect some legacy MPLS revenue. We aren't trying to help our customers say, well, here's how you could utilize our services and this VMware SD-WAN. We really are designing networks based on their business outcomes, because I'm not worried about legacy revenue and copper that's been in the ground for 50 years that I don't want to turn down. And I think that creates this agility. We firmly believe that, especially VMware, but all SD-WAN in general, was the key for customers to unhandcuff themselves from the big giant telcos of, well, all of my sites are on net to them, so I have to go with them and I need them to bring in the connectivity. We are helping build a network based off of business outcomes. So not all sites need the same connectivity model. Some might be on MPLS or dedicated internet. Some might be broadband. Maybe we're using LTE as failover. Some will have 2 always on. We're really building the network site by site of what makes sense for that business unit, the revenue it generates, the business function, how many people are there. And so I really think that's a key differentiator, that we really do have our customers' best interest in heart, because we don't have this legacy network to try to protect.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's great. I do have one question come in here, guys, if we want to jump in and answer it. How does SASE help with a multi-cloud architecture change for customers?
Yeah, I touched on that a little bit, Lance. I'll expand upon it a little bit further. So I know I talked about the idea of geo-IP lookups. I know I talked about the idea of getting you closer to the application. There's other integrations too that come out of this. Again, SASE is not just a firewall in the cloud. So there's connectivity in the VMware SASE pops into Azure WAN and the AWS WAN backbone as well. And so maybe I have distributed architectures. Maybe I have a multi-cloud of Azure and AWS, and I can get that on-ramp already into it, right? So it helps me from a standpoint of getting it as close from my edge to that POP, protected, and then from that POP, I'm already integrated into those WAN providers. So that's simply just the POP gateways. You can then continue to look at from a SASE SD-WAN standpoint, meaning the traditional VMware SD-WAN, and we can run those virtually in your IaaS environment. So I can start to advertise IP space from my AWS clusters or from my Azure clusters. Maybe I've got Azure East and Azure West, and I'm distributed there. And again, we're choosing the best path. We'll have connectivity, an automatic tunnel overlay. So really, to me, from the multi-cloud strategy, it's really about understanding where my user is, where my application is, choosing the best path to get there, and then really automating this distributed architecture, which helps when you already have 150 global POPs. You're already distributed on the VMware side.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I mean, so this technology all seems very complex to me. So you would think, at least I would think that it would be a lot of moving parts from an implementation standpoint, be very, very difficult from how do you roll this out? I mean, could you give me an overview of just really an understanding of we talked about our managed services a little bit, but from an implementation perspective, is it something that, is really kind of a slow roll as far as it's rolled out, or, what's the speed duration look like for a customer? Like if I said, hey, I need to do 1 site a week, is that doable versus, hey, I need to do 50 sites a week? What is our capability there?
Yeah, so I'll kick off. I think the fastest pace we did to date was 2,000 sites in about 3 months for a large global retailer, right? I mean, realistically, once I have, call it the core routing table in, right, which is my SD-WAN hubs in my data center, and it's my SASE POP design in place, it really can become plug and play from there, right? We're creating business policies, we're creating templates. It's really about integrating into, you'll have sites that aren't on SD-WAN yet, right? So we need some network to network interface with your legacy network as we do these migrations, but also we will move at your pace. And that's the benefit of a partner, like Onyx, that can come to the table and help implement it and kind of start to begin that, right? Typically we see SD-WAN bring some 30% savings over legacy MPLS. But that savings also comes with some upfront costs. I have to go to the board, I have to go to the capital committee. I need to ask for this money, and I cut a big check, and now I've got gear sitting on the dock. I've got it sitting, until we roll it out. And really the Onyx approach is we can start saving you money immediately, right? We can bring this operating expense to the table. We'll reduce your operating expense. We don't have this big capital layout. And really we, call it just-in-time shipping. We'll deliver a box to your site. The next day we'll have a tech show up at your site, and we turn it up, and that's when that billing event begins. So we give you that flexibility to move at your pace. Steve Harris, anything from your side?
I guess this goes back to the approach discussion that I had on why Onyx. Our approach really does match with whatever speed you want to roll out at. We have capabilities, across the country, and that means that we can roll it out at your speed. The key is making sure that you've got the design components done properly. That's really critical. We tend to ensure that you focus on getting the design up front done properly, and then from there, the ability to actually roll it out physically to the sites is very, very quick because you're following the design. So you just want to make sure that you don't go so fast that you don't pay good attention to the design side. But once that's there, it can be very, very rapid, and we can scale up as required to meet the rollouts. As John said, 2,000 in 3 months, and that's a very large rollout. But if the design is done properly, it's not a big deal.
Here's another question that came in. This is, I thought that was kind of interesting one. It says, is there a typical first use case or a type of customer change with a customer where SASE may provide fast and real value? I think, John, you spoke a little bit about some of that, but is there kind of that tip? What is that perfect customer that hasn't done X, Y, and Z yet, and this is the solution that's for them? What does that look like?
Yeah. So there's a lot. The answer to this is yes, right? I mean, I've yet to find the customer who says I couldn't benefit from it. But what are some of the ones we've seen? I think this also kind of goes to another question I saw coming in through the list, so I can kind of tackle two here. Zero trust network access, right? So that's an inherent part of the SASE solution. So I always, when I talk with customers, we think of every user is a firewall, right? It's not about protecting the access from my edge. It's about protecting me, the employee, and what do I have access to and what don't I need access to? And so that lends to a great use case of mergers and acquisitions. If I'm an organization that is bringing on a new network or divesting a network, creating that SASE environment is a very easy way to do this sort of plug and play. To Steve's point, once the design is done correctly on paper, it becomes plug and play and zero touch provisioning to roll out from that point. So one is, if you're an organization that is going through network changes, whether through acquisition or divestiture, and the idea of plugging zero trust network access in, because I may have part of that M&A that needs access to legacy applications, only part of those legacy applications, not the entire subnet, right? So that idea of ZTNA certainly helps with M&A. Outside of that, I always tell customers, it starts with getting the data center piece in. We get that hub in, we create a network to network interface with what you currently have there. And Michael hit on this. It's transport agnostic. So maybe you're an organization who says, I'm MPLS today and I still have 2 years left on my contract, so this isn't for me. I would disagree. What are you seeing from your bandwidth challenges? You can still utilize this MPLS, both as overlay or underlay. So maybe you're staring down, I need to upgrade MPLS circuits. Maybe that's going to restart my contract, or it's going to increase my bandwidth because 10 meg's not cutting it, and I'm going to triple my cost to go to 100 meg. Or maybe you're getting complaints from your users because routing that traffic back to the data center to then go out the centralized firewall is a problem because the applications are all living in the cloud. And so we have a lot of customers that will come in right out of the gate, drop in our head ends, route over your MPLS, but we'll bring in lower cost bandwidth circuits rather than upgrading that MPLS. And then we really create this roadmap for you over the next 12 months, 24 months, 36 months to say, okay, these are the sites coming out of contract. Do we need to keep MPLS, some SLA-driven circuit? Do we have a second reliable broadband option here? Do we need two always-on connections? Can we use an LTE? So I don't think there's a wrong answer for a customer who says, this just isn't for me. I'm not there yet right now. But there is definitely, it's a very malleable, what is the challenge? What is the business outcome that VMware SASE is solving for? And I've yet to find the customer who couldn't benefit from more network bandwidth, lower cost, more flexible routing, more visibility, more security. So until I find that customer, I'd say there's not a use case where it doesn't fit.
So
there
it
are
makes
a lot
sense.
of different.
Go ahead.
You're right, Lance and John. There's really no bad use case for this, and we saw a lot of creative ways that this happened, even during the pandemic, where you had people who had to pop up COVID clinics, where you had to make sure you had secure control over healthcare data in locations that were there for a day, 2 days, using internet transport, using LTE. We've talked to and worked with municipalities about setting and swimming pools in the summer or ice rinks in the winter, where they have these connections where they need to have access to corporate data center information, but secured at the edge, and they're there and they're not the next day. Like there's people who are making transitions to different SaaS applications, and now they have people who are accessing it and they want to have security, but they're not now traversing their data center. How do you do that? All of these things come into play, and there's 1,000 different use cases, and that's why we focus on what's the business problem you're trying to solve, and then this is a great way to get at it.
And that makes sense. The more I read internally, how we're spanning about every vertical out there, with our solutions, it makes a lot of sense. Any organization that has a lot of sites would benefit from this technology for sure.
Well, and one thing we're getting out of this conversation is that you guys have been there and done it before, so you've seen how you can build the design and solve the problems, and I think that's a big advantage for a customer coming to you versus trying to do it themselves. I mean, they can do it themselves, but you've seen it before. You're going to have the answers more quickly, right?
Well, not only that, I think we can become an extension of their team, right? So, I think we discussed somewhere earlier, we talked a little bit about co-management, and we have that ability that they can have insight and visibility into the environment. They can do administration tasks if they'd like. If not, we can do it all. But providing that co-management is something I think is unique, because a lot of managed service organizations want to say, no, that's fully managed. You don't touch it, right? We're not in the business of telling you how to do your business. So we're trying to make sure we have a custom solution that allows for that flexibility.
Well, the roles-based access. So exactly, you can give the customer the level of access that they need and show them those reports where they can see the performance that they're getting over their links. They can see the benefits that they're getting from the SD-WAN, from the remediation that John talked about, and they can see how their applications are being utilized. So certainly that's a big part of it. Yeah,
great, thank you. Let's see if we have any other questions that came in. I'm not seeing any other questions. Let's see here. No, I don't see any other questions. Anybody have anything else to add here?
I think we covered a lot, Lance.
We covered it all?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, all right. I appreciate everybody's time today. It was awesome, and really appreciate it. Until next time, everybody take care.